if you cannot connect to my work now, there will be days where you maybe think back of it, or wait, there will be days where you can look back at it, where you can connect with it. And if you have to face these days, I'm here. Like I can provide maybe something that helps you go over this phase.
Welcome to the Flying Fruit Bowl, a platform dedicated to the discussion and exploration of art in the creative process. This week's episode is the first part of a two-part conversation with the amazing Cursed By Morrow. Cursed By Morrow, aka Marcel, is a photographer from Austria who creates stunningly atmospheric images that explore human existence and the way in which an image can represent so much more than the subject it depicts. I had a great time talking to Marcel, and I really hope you enjoyed this conversation. So, I'm going to start where I start with everybody, which is just tell us a bit about yourself and how you became a photographer.
Okay, let's start with myself. My name is Marcel Schuster. I'm located in the very south of Austria, in Carinthia to be precise. I'm living on the borderlands to Slovenia and Italy, so it's really just 5 minutes away to get there. I'm 32 years old, and how I got into photography was actually just by accident. Like, photography never popped up on my radar, to be honest. Like, it never occurred to me to be something that I would like to fulfill or chase or something like that. And it happened by accident, or more or less out of a mood. The story to it is at the end of 2017, I had a heavy illness. It's illness, I think, because I had a heart inflammation, and I wasn't able. I'm a man of extremes. Okay, to be completely straight off, like I was an extreme power lifter. Okay, and then all of a sudden they were like, you know what? That's not good for your heart. You're not able to do this anymore. So they took the sports away from me, and I was like, shit, I need to find something else. And it was extreme downfall, because it was like I was on the top of my physique, at the top of my form. I was really celebrating it. Yeah, I felt great through it, and then they took it away from me, and I was like, "Fuck! What am I going to do now with my time? I need some sort of outlet." I would say. I went to the doctors. They allowed me to take a 2-hour walk per day, and other than that, I was just forced to lay in bed. And so I took the 2-hour walk. It was a really hard thing, it was end stage, or more or less. I mean, I'm not a doctor. It was very bad. And I went to the local media store, and I just saw this camera package there. It was like 400 euros. It was just a Canon. I don't know, what was it? A simply Canon beginner type of camera, with a lens, and I was like, maybe I could do this, just to get these 2 hours around per day. I have to go out and walk anyway, so let's just take some pictures. It was really out of a mood, like, and then I bought this camera. I activated it straight off, and the next day, because I had to charge the batteries and shit, and this is how it actually started. This is how I actually became interested in capturing everyday life around me. And this was actually the time when, there was this boom on Instagram where everybody became a street photographer, and everyone was so into street and shit. And I just jumped the train. Let's do this, let's try it. And so I captured everyday life in my little city. And this was actually, that was the start. That was the beginning, the foundation.
How interesting is it though that, like, not had you not been ill, it wouldn't have happened, but had you not been ill, it possibly wouldn't have happened that way. Like, and it's kind of interesting that you used photography kind of just as like a documentation for, like, the time you had outside. That's really, really cool.
I guess if there wouldn't be that accident, if it wouldn't be that illness, if I wouldn't go there until a certain day, I probably would never have started with it, because really I had no connection to it, like absolutely zero. And
that's crazy.
It was just, it is. I was talking with a friend the other day about it, and we were chit-chatting about it, and he was like, "Wow, you're really doing good," And I'm like, "Yeah, but just imagine if everything was okay, if I was continuing doing my sport, and never even think of something like this. And he was like, shit, you're actually right. Like it's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it makes you kind of think like what kind of opportunities and like hobbies and stuff that we could have, we could very much go into and be good at, but we just don't take the time to, or we just haven't really found that yet. That's kind of because it's like your work is very, very good. It's not like, you fell into photography and your work is okay. Like your work is awesome. And it's like it has a very nice aesthetic and it's very kind of considered. And it's kind of funny that wouldn't have necessarily been something you would have done. I don't know. That's just weird, but it's also really cool, though, I think.
No, it is a really interesting train of thought if you just keep going with it. But yeah, that's the story how I got into photography.
So where did the name Cursed by Morrow come from?
That's such a, when I started photography, I had my little Instagram profile. It was just in a regular, everyone did probably. And I backed it. It developed, it got some sort of motion in there, and I was like, oh, okay, like I could really turn this into a photography thing. And so when I got along with street photography, I just keep the old tag, I keep my old profile, I keep the people in there who were actually willed to stay because it was a little bit of a change. Yeah. And the name Cursed by Morrow actually, when I decided to switch from street photography to more fine art photography, I wanted to give myself a new identity, to give my work a new identity, just to label myself in a different direction. Because people knew me by then. Back at that time, I hit a few milestones in street photography. Let's say, I got the big features, I got a bit of traffic, people know who I was. So it wasn't like, oh, this guy came out of nowhere. Like I had a small name, and then I changed from this to that. And I was like, fuck, I need to label it completely different. And there was this song, I was listening to music. I'm listening to music all day long, practically. And I was listening to are you familiar with the band? It's a deathcore band from Australia, and they're called Make Them Suffer.
No.
It's a band I love, when working out, it was my band back then. And I really love those guys. And there's this song of theirs, it's called Never Bloom. And in this line of the song, he says, it was Morrow who cursed this place. And I was like, I heard that line, I was like, fuck. Repeat? Yeah, it was Morrow who cursed this place. And I could connect to this line on so many levels, to be Morrow himself as a person, to be like, it was just overwhelming. And I was like, I have to do something with this. Like, I'm that kind of guy. I take notes of everything, when I'm trying to, you name it, I note it, I'm that kind of guy. So I put my phone out, I was noting. And when later on, when I was really brainstorming about a new name, I came across that line again. It was, I don't know, let's say 2 weeks after I heard it. And I was like, shit, it had the same impact on me like it had on the day I actually heard it. And I was like, that's something, that's really something, because that's something that matters something to me. Let's put it like that. And so the name Cursed by Morrow was actually born, inspired by this great band and by the great line of that great band.
See, that's fascinating because your work has a very particular aesthetic that's kind of quite gloomy. And the idea of like the word cursed being in the kind of the title of a name, kind of, it's like interesting and reflective, even though it's not necessarily meant to be. That's quite interesting. That's kind of, it's kind of, it doesn't really tell you anything about you, but also tells you a lot about yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, because it really just like, I knew where I wanted to go with my photography, I knew what I wanted to achieve. And therefore I really wanted to, you can call it, I wanted to build a brand on it, I wanted to establish something. And therefore I'm a very organized guy. And therefore I really had to think about, okay, this is the concept. This is what you're going to do. You have the color grade system. You have this, you just need something like that keeps people, that keeps them on your side, that drags them in, that's something that's like, why? Or something where they can connect the name to the color, for example, or the name to the picture.
Yeah.
And this was, I thought about it quite a lot, and I took a completely different approach to it, to be honest, because as I told you, this was nothing like, okay, I have my street photography account, I'm doing a few pictures here and there. I really try to build it up as a brand. I really try to establish something here. And I think with that name, and now that you know my pictures, you're familiar with that look and everything, it just plays together very well.
Yeah, so I'm actually really curious, like how does creating work underneath like a brand or kind of more of like a pseudonym kind of affect the work you create? Like, do you feel like you can create work in a more free way, or do you think you're not as restricted because it's under a brand as opposed to say your name?
My work being restricted by that, I didn't quite understand.
So do you think that like how do you think creating? Let me think about how to phrase it in a better way. Like, how do you think creating work under Cursed by Morrow, like, does that restrict the work, or does that help you be more free with the work because it's not under your own name? So you can kind of do work that isn't going to be necessarily linked back to you if people don't know it's you.
Yeah. I had a few experiences in that field because the thing is, I'm into photography of all sorts of kind. I'm really trying to experiment with everything. Lately, with product photography and everything. I'm really trying to expand my horizon and see beyond it. But the thing is, excuse me, for this brand here, I'm only showcasing what's fitting to the brand.
Yeah.
Like we really talk about it at brand number and label right now, because when I'm going out and doing some macro photography, or I also do sunsets and stuff, from like people would say pretty things, but it's just not fitting for the label. It's not fitting for the output. It's not fitting for the audience I'm aiming towards. So therefore, it limits me, yes, but no. When we're speaking of the work per se and of the audience I'm targeting, I have a special kind of viewer in mind. For example, for the output that I'm doing. Okay, it's like, when you have to imagine it like this. Okay, let's go down the rabbit hole. It's like now, but you have to people, for example, they come to my page, they see my work, and they're like, I don't like it. It's too dark. It's too blah. I don't like it. And I'm like, that's fine. It's perfectly fine for me. But I know that someday you will face a situation where you're like, fuck, this really speaks to me in some sort of way. My clientele is always changing. I do not expect people to have their shit together and be like, I like his pictures, because these people will move on eventually. But I just want to have an impact on you. Therefore, if you really are at some point of your life when you're like, shit, I really can connect to that. I can connect to that scheme. I can connect to that color. Dude, I'm there. I'm having you, like, be my guest, check it out. Question, what would you like to see from something, in a different situation? This is what I was looking for. A piece of work, an art piece, like something that, what would the viewer would like to see? Like, what would you like to see? How do you feel at the moment? How do you feel about when you think about certain things? Can someone provide these things? Like, it's all, it's all glitter and shiny, but people barely, they talk a little bit too less about the dark side sometimes, like, especially on this, social media, where everything is just, come on, let's all be friends and rainbows. And this is something for me personally, like, art should be, this is my personal opinion, but if art's uncomfortable, it's awakening something in me, and this is exactly when I'm looking at pictures, for example, or when I'm visiting galleries, like, I'm always dragged towards these more darker, moody tones in paintings, for example. For 2 weeks ago, I was at a vernissage at a friend of mine, and she's a painter herself, and there were at least, I don't know, there were 25 paintings in the room, and so colorful and bright, and like, really pretty. Like, don't get me wrong, really beautiful paintings. But there was this one picture in the middle of the room, like, it was A3 maybe, and there was just one corner of it was black and greenish. It popped out to me. It was like a moth to the flame. I just went there and I was like, shit, that is caught, it caught my attention. Subconsciously, I don't know why, because the room was filled with pretty shit, you know, and I was like the moth to the flame, like, let's check this out. And I was standing there, and it was just, you know, a tiny fraction of a picture, actually, of a painting, excuse me. And I was just like admiring it, like, wow, that's great.
See, that's a really interesting consideration in terms of like the viewer. I think you're probably one of the very few people that I've spoken to who's actually has a viewer in mind. A lot of the artists I speak to just create work and then hope that someone's going to connect with it, as opposed to reversing that and being like, oh, what am I actually talking about? What I'm actually saying, and who is actually going to want to see this? So I think your approach is very, very interesting, and yeah, it's very fascinating.
Now you really have to see it like this. I am very well aware that my art or my form of art, it's probably not consumable over years, you know, by one person, for example, because it's staged on different areas on life, mostly the negative ones. And when someone, as I told you before, when someone passes my page and he's like, I don't like that shit, it's too moody, maybe, God beware, something happens in a few months and you will think back and be like, shit, there was this thing that I saw, or I remember these colors, I connect them with something bad, and, you know,
Yeah.
they see themselves like, shit, there was something, I can remember something. And this is, as I told you, I really have a perspective when it comes to viewers, because I just ask myself, what do you want to see from other people? Like in bad times, like what does art, how does it speak to you? And can you provide the same feeling you get when you look, for example, at that little fraction of a painting? Can you provide the same feeling to someone else? So just that they're staying there and just admiring this little tiny fraction of dark artwork, actually.
So it's very interesting that you are pretty much self-taught for the most part from YouTube. Is that correct?
Oh, I'm only self-taught, like
from
scratch.
Yeah, so I'm just curious generally, because I actually really enjoyed looking through your story the other day when you asked people to ask you questions. And I looked at all your responses, they were really, really cool. And I was like, oh, now I've got a load of questions to ask. But I'm really curious just as to like, how important do you think it is for photographers and artists to learn about things and to kind of go out there and actually kind of find the information themselves?
It's very important. I think it's very important in the sense of, it depends on where you want to go with your art or what you want to do with it. But for example, when I started out, you know, as I told you, or as you could see in my stories, I was a bloody beginner. Like I had no knowledge of the technique, of the lighting, of anything behind it. I was lucky enough to have the time, because I was bound to bed basically. Yeah. Time was on my side and I had to kill this time. And when I had the Canon camera I mentioned before. I think I had this thing for 2 months, maybe, because, you know, I figured out really quick, that's too heavy, it's too slow for that kind of photography I would like to do. It's too heavy, it's too slow. Back in the day, I was watching a YouTube video by a YouTuber called Tom Sawyer, and he did a review on the Fujifilm X100F, and it was new at that time. You know, it just came out. I was like, shit, I want to have that, because it's small, it's compact. You know, it's like it has all the settings on the outside, but it was a shit ton of money at that time, because I think it was 1,300 euro or something like this. So you have to imagine just the mindset. You are a beginner. You have no idea where this thing is going to lead you. And I was like, no. My impulsive ass was like, no, we're gonna buy this camera. You know, it will just help you to improve and stuff. And I bought the camera. And the funny thing is, I learned everything about it afterwards. You know, I was just so impulsive I wanted to get a grip on it. And then when I had it, I was like, okay, the dials are on the outside. It's way easier that way. Now I can learn about exposure and everything, because I started off, something that bugged me about Canon and about the Canon system for me personally was just, it was so hard. Everything was just, you know, it was completely automatic. And I'm not a big fan of, you know, giving the tech or the camera in that sense the decision to do whatever it likes to do. You know, I want to be in full control, and therefore I went with manual straight off, and I learned it from scratch. And, you know, and there's this the exposure triangle, and all these things I was taught by YouTube alone. Especially this dude, his name is Mike Brown. Yeah, he's such a wholesome old dude. He was like, or he is back at the time, he was between 55 and 60. And he was really explaining photography in such a gentle way, for beginners, like, that kind of when you come to a class and you have no idea what you're doing there, actually, like the dog meme, and he's just explaining it to you in such a gentle and genuine way that you really like, for dummies, more or less. But I learned so much on that. I watched his videos on repeat during the night, and I practiced everything the very next day, because I have to point it out again, I had the time advantage on my side. I get it why people ask me like, whoa, how long are you doing photography? 10 years? And I'm like, no, for 4 years. But don't take this as my word, because I had time. I didn't have to
That's
work.
a good point.
And I want to become so good in this. And yeah, take your time. Like, it takes time. It was just my advantage at that point. And since I've told you in the beginning, I'm a man of extremes, I just wanted to, it was my obsession, because I went back from sports and now I got into photography, and I'm an ride or die, all or nothing kind of dude, So it was just the kind of black and white dude. Like, yeah. And so I think YouTube it's such a, it's a huge and a very powerful tool, especially in the world of artists. When I learned everything about the exposure triangle, for example, and manual settings, I went into the color wheel, to contemporary colors, or however the English word is, I have no idea. And, I really started, I did step by step by step. And it was not like that I was watching one video and was like, okay, I can do it now. No, I watched this, I practiced it. I told people about it. I tried active teaching as well, because I really wanted to manifest everything. I really wanted to get this wisdom, like, hey, I can provide something because I learned about it. I studied it for the last 6 months, and therefore it's very important. And it's also very important to have a teacher or a mentor, in my opinion, as an artist in general, because you have to see something. You have to see it like this. Mike Brown, for example, or the Tom Sawyer dude, and there were two others. But especially Mike Brown, I will never meet this guy. I will never be able to say hello to him, to shake his hand. And he's not even aware that I'm existing. But the impact that this man had on my life, on my approach as an aspiring photographer, as an artist, this is something like, I can never pay that back, because he was just he gave me so much information and so much on my way. And this is the sad thing about it. If you think about it like this, because you're learning from people that they give you so much, and it's for free, for fuck's sake. So take advantage of it. And therefore, yes, I really do think it's a very powerful tool that every artist should be using, because it doesn't matter if it's about paintings or music, if it's about, riffs, or it doesn't matter. There's so many tutorials, so many how-to videos. Boop, boop, boop. Just choose it. But again, as someone who, it really depends on where you want to go with your art or with that kind of stuff. Do you just want to do it as a hobby? Do you just want to, smell into it and see how it works? Do you really want to get money out of it? I mean, it's all about your intentions, to be honest. And I think maybe this is just my radical, extreme approach on it. But I really was like, all or nothing. There's no in between. You have time, you're going to learn it now. You have no idea, but you're going to learn it. And after the 6 months, after you're back in work and after you're back at what you're doing, you can tell people about what you did in these 6 months, because you're not going to sit there and not doing shit. And it was also very important, to be honest, for my mental health as well, because after this illness and everything, I just had to get back on track. I had to find something, to be inspired by again, something to. It may sound drastically, but something to live for, something to stand up and be like, okay, I'm going to do this today. Just have my to-do list, my checklist. And this is important. My motivation, if you would like to call it like that. So yeah.
I'm actually really curious. I feel like I keep saying that, but I'm a curious guy. What can I say? I'm really kind of curious. Like, would you want to be that mentor teacher figure? Because I feel like you'd be a very good person to do that.
Yes, definitely. I see myself one day as well to be that kind of guy in one way or the other. It's something that I wasn't aware of, to be honest, but it just reflected back at me, when I was talking to people on Instagram, example, when people were reaching out, and I was like, no, I have the time to tell this dude now that he should take care of this and that. It happened subconsciously because I was like, he needs your help. He's reaching out. So obviously, be that guy again, mindset, be that guy that you wanted to be back, you wanted people to be back then when you started out. You had a question, you approached someone, but this is the downside of Instagram, and this is something that's it's concerning in some way, because I'm trying to answer to every question, or to every. I'm really trying to stay in touch with the community, and it's so shocking when I'm texting back, and people are like, oh, I did not expect you to text back, or oh, never expected an answer. And I was like, why? Like, what? Why? Like, you have a concern, you have a question. If I can help you, be my guest. But if you ask me something about rocket science, of course, I would be like, there's a Wikipedia article. But if I can help you, I can help. But people get so distracted by these numbers these days, like Instagram, for example, that it's a concern to me. Thinking back, okay, back then, I didn't expect anything like that as well. But it's just, I'm here to talk, I'm here to connect. And then it's like, oh, I didn't expect an answer. Like, fuck, oh no.
I could definitely relate to that. I didn't expect an answer from me back either. So I could definitely, but I think it's because we put people, especially with large followings, on pedestals on social media, and it's like people might not seem as approachable, or they might not seem as personal because, like, you're not in your stories necessarily. You're not necessarily the most at the forefront of your work. So therefore, you can kind of seem quite mysterious and quite kind of like in the background, if that makes sense, because your work is the forefront. So it's like sometimes you may not seem particularly approachable, or it may not seem like you're going to answer because we don't really see you. Maybe.
That was something I was thinking about the other day as well, because I talked to a friend of mine who's into is it some sort of social media agency? I don't know. He's just promoting, these kind of influencer kind of people. And he was like, dude, you have to put your face behind your brand. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to. And he's like, yeah, but, and he explained it very, very understandably to me. He was like, yeah, but then people can connect to you even more. They feel like they are your friend or something like this if they personally see who's behind it. And it really gave me something to think about, to be honest. But at that point, I'm not ready for that. Maybe by the point that this podcast will be released, maybe then. But if we're talking about straight it right now, no, nah.
I think what I've learned personally, because I'm quite interested in real life, which is funny. But I think you kind of realize there comes to a point where you have to make a decision whether you're going to be like somebody's friend, or if you're going to be just kind of more the mysterious artist. There is a point which you have, because either path you choose has its advantages and disadvantages. And it kind of, as you said earlier, it's just kind of really about what you want from your career, I guess, and like how you want to approach things, and what the end goal you actually have is. Because there's nothing wrong with your work just speaking for itself and nobody ever seeing you, because that's not a bad thing at all. That can add more interest in your work in some way. But then if you become somebody's friend, that could potentially harm what you're doing, because you're not there to be people's friends. You're there to still be the creator of some images. And, like the idea of friends online, we throw around the word friend very, very easily nowadays. And it's quite hard to really determine where that line really truly is in terms of between strangers and friends. So I don't know. Something that I'm thinking about, I always think about as well. in terms of the fine fruit bowl, and do I want to put myself out there a bit more? It's a bit of a weird one.
I completely agree with you, especially what you said about friends and strangers, that thin line. It's true. It's completely true. But now I'm at that point of my career. I'm sticking to the letter, like I'm just like, okay, I'm more the mysterious artist. You can reach out to me. I'm gladly here to talk to you, but here's my color, not my face. Here are my pictures. They have that color. That's me. And this is just, I mean, I tried it. I really tried it. I took advantage of this, of the close friends feature on Instagram, for example. And I really was like, you know what? This is for the core audience. This is for your guys. This is for your folks. I probably posted one picture of my face. And I was so fucking uncomfortable, like shit. I'm not that kind of guy. What can I say? Yeah. If you go through my phone, if I would hand you my phone right now, there would be maybe three pictures of myself, 3 selfies. Yeah. And these are back from 2014, probably, Yeah.
And yeah, I agree with that. Somebody asked me for a picture of me when I was younger. And I was like, I don't have a picture. Someone's like, do you have a picture of yourself? I was like, I don't have a picture of myself from at least like 6-7 years ago, maybe. Because I just don't take, I'm busy taking pictures of other stuff and other people and other things. And it's like, that's not how I live my life. Okay, cool. Right. Whatever. And I found one from like 6 years ago. So I sent them that. I was like, there you go. Here's me from 6 years ago. I look exactly the same. Here you go. But it's about comfort. It's about what you're comfortable with and how comfortable you are expressing yourself through your work, both physically and, kind of figuratively and literally. That's what. But actually, talking about career, like how important is it actually for you to have a career in photography?
Not that important.
Okay.
Like, I mean, it depends on what we consider as a career.
Yeah, okay, that's true. But okay, let me rephrase it then. How important is it for you to make money from photography?
Oof. I wouldn't lie. I would lie if I would say it was not important because the shit that I put into it, the money itself it costs money. Yeah. And photography is just like music. It's an expensive hobby. If you play 1 gig per weekend, you get $50 and your guitar was $460 and you're like, oh, okay, that will totally pay off. No, mate, it won't. It's not going to work like that, And if I just want to, how, I mean, I didn't do all the maths on it, but if I would be able just to cover the expenses, or at least if I was able to cover what I'm paying yearly for my Adobe membership, that would be a career for me already, because this is expensive. But this is something. Yeah, exactly. But this is something. If I would make 140 or 42 euros, it would be a career for me, because I would not have to worry about, oh shit, it's October. Oh shit, Adobe is going to knock on my door. It would just be like, I'm fine. Yeah. So therefore, but I mean, on the long term, of course, I have some things in the back of my hand right now. But again, it's just like, what do you consider personally as a career? Because I never thought that this was even going to happen. I didn't plan it to happen. I put my mind on it. I was like, okay, prepare. What if? But all of a sudden you're here. What if people 7 months ago, if not longer, I started to create presets. I just created 6 presets, put them together. Maybe if someone would like to have it, I have it prepared. I was playing with the thought, but I never actually experienced to wake up one day and people are really like, oh my gosh, how much are they? Where can I get it? And and I was like, fuck. The thing that you were actually preparing for, which was just something like a faraway dream, people are actually asking. Because as I told you in the beginning, I do not expect people to come up to me and be like, I want to buy this or that from you, because I don't consider myself to be that person to be like, yeah, come on, it's great, you can, nah. I did 3 prints The very first prints I did for myself, they're still hanging here on the wall. And I just, I look at these pictures and I'm like, fuck, they look amazing, because they are my kind of tone, they're my kind of story. But just imagine to people waking up next to these things, for example, it's so unreal to me. Like, I haven't wrapped my head around that thought yet, and still it happened. So
it's really weird for me because a lot of the photographers I speak to are very, 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 very shy at promoting and trying to sell their work. For some reason, a lot of photographers seem to be very kind of reserved when it comes to trying to sell their work. They're not necessarily as they don't really feel like they're deserving. And I think it's a shame, because then people are creating exceptionally great work. And it's like, not everyone is going to reach out to you. So you have to also do the work of, promoting yourself also. And I think, like you sell prints. Do you sell prints now?
I do sell prints now.
I didn't know that. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know why? Because this is the thing. This is the thing that's happening right now. I have to admit, a lot of it has to do with the last talk we had, about website, everything. I really have to give that. You gave me so much input and so much things to think about, that I sat there at the evening, I was doing my list, and I was like, this is what I'm doing. This is what I told you before. I have projects going on right now, and they are actually ready. They are ready to print. They are ready to launch. But I want to wait with it when when their website is up, because I hate to promote these half-assed things over Instagram, for example, and be like, hey, I have this and this and this print. Just write me a DM. Like, how fucking unprofessional is this? In my own sense, I want to have it on a page. I want to have it where people really can see, okay, here you got everything together. You like the picture, you can buy it as a print. You like the look, you can buy it as a preset if you would like to. You would like to buy a course or a teaching, here you can have it as well. I want to sell the whole package, not just the fragments of it, because so if someone reaches out to me and asks for a print, which they occasionally do, I'm like, yeah, what do you have in mind? I will send you a folder of prints I already did, so you can look through. If you like something, just let me know, because right now it's really just, I'm not promoting it on a big scale, because, as I told you, it's just like, work circumstances aside right now, which is also a huge factor. I don't have the time. My screen time on Instagram nowadays is maybe 15 to 20 minutes at max, and this is when I post something, when I go online, answer a few questions, and post something. And I swear to God, it's so hard these days, just when everything is flowing in and I have to sort out, because I have so many other things to do. And therefore, a website, it would be so much easier for me. It would be so much. But again, there are the work circumstances. I have no idea what will happen next week, for example.
Yeah, of course, absolutely,
but the things are launched. Everything is prepared. Everything just waiting to be printed and stuff. And it's eating away on me as well, because I think, I'm that kind of guy. Fuck, I worked for it. I have it here. I have it here. So let's put it out.
Absolutely, and not just that. People are going to want it as well.
And I have to add, if you allow me, because I think I gave you the wrong impression. When I said back then, what I said, the question you had before, I just want to point it out as well. I'm not, my prints, for example, or my work, I'm not shy about them. I'm really proud about them. And I also have to say, my prints are not going to be cheap by any means, because they are not going to be like, oh shit, I just got a 20 euro or 30 euro print. No, because when people do it, it's okay. But for me, the pictures themselves, they have value to it, man. They have. I can tell you, there's value about each and every picture, and so much work of detailing and perfection that not my time. It's not the time that these pictures cost me, but it's just the value they have. The story, the background story they have. And I don't want to produce. I also, this is something that I figured out myself as well. I don't want to be that kind of, quantity. Poof, have it. Everyone can have it, because I really am aiming towards it. We are speaking about something now. I don't want. I want really quality matters, and I'm going to the first prints that I'm going to launch, which they're going to be limited prints only. Because when people really connect to that stuff, and really people connect to me and my work, then they should have some sort of benefit of it. I don't want to make it accessible for the masses, because maybe it's just a different thought or different approach to it, but I fucking value my own work. For me, it's damn valuable. And therefore, I think it deserves someone who can really value this as well. Someone who really knows, okay, this is the story behind it. This is what's hanging there. This is, not someone just like, oh, cool. Do you make prints? Yes. Is it more than $20? Yes. I'm not interested. I don't need those kind of people in my clientele. Don't get me wrong. But so many people reaching out and they're like, do you sell prints? Yes. What size? Currently, A4 and A3. I prefer A3. And how much is it? Yeah, starting with 90 euros up to 120. No, okay. Do you have smaller things? No, currently I don't have it, which is, it's understandable. I mean, but maybe just because it's because of me, because I'm that kind of guy. I'm probably one of these dudes. I still pay for art. When I see a print, I go there, I contact, the artist, and I'm like, hey, I saw your picture. I connected with so many artists this way over Instagram, and their pictures are hanging here on my wall now, and I know that these prints weren't cheap. I know that I could be there and be like, hey, you know what? Let's just save it as, and go to the print shop and do it myself. But it's just these yeah, I know these people. I know these people. A friend asked me, like, why don't you just right-click, save it as, and go to the local prints? I'm like,
no.
What the fuck,
no,
dude? You did
no.
that to
That's
me.
just like,
no. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's like
really just something
horror to any artist creating anything anywhere.
Exactly.
Like, that's so devaluing the whole system of even creating anything like that. Oh no, I would not be friends with that person.
I was like, you cannot spread things like that. You cannot say this to me, because I'm trying, I'm trying to sell my shit. What the fuck are you actually talking about? No, and when I see a piece of work that I really connect to, or that I see, and I'm just reaching out and be like, hey, how is it? Do you sell prints? And I have the impression personally that people I'm reaching out to, they don't take it very serious. They're like, okay, it's just someone again who just asked me for a print, and we'll be just like, no, thanks, not interested. And this is something that I want to avoid straight off.
Of course.
This is why I really want to have the website here. I want to have the pricings and everything there, so I don't have to deal with these kind of questions like, can you do it any cheaper? Is it a little bit smaller? Something like that. But then again, maybe it's just me because I'm willed to pay for it, and I automatically assume that people function the same way as I do, or at least I want to build my clientele that way. I've got these people in.
But it's good though, because you've got a standard for yourself. You've set yourself a standard that you're like, okay, I'm not going to go down any lower than this. This is, and it's actually really nice to hear that you value yourself that much, and you value what you do that much. Because I think a lot of the time people don't value what they do, or they don't really put the kind of like, the kind of thought into what they do in terms of like, what I'm doing is worth something. Because a lot of the time people, particularly with photographers and photography, it's kind of quite seen as quite throwaway, or it's seen as like, anyone can do it. And that's not actually the case.
I completely agree with you. Whoever says everyone can do it, I disagree. Like, seriously.
So I think everyone can take an image, sure, but not everyone can tell a story through an image. Or not everyone can create a piece of art. I think an image is not always a piece of art. I think people don't really realize that. So it's like, it's having that extra layer and the kind of depth to your work. Like, that takes skill, that takes talent, that takes something more than just pointing and shooting a camera.
Exactly. I'm completely with you, because this is also what artworks makes for me. The personal story, the connection. Can I connect to it in some sort of way? does it take me back to some certain place? Does it take me back to some certain period of my life? That's art for me, you know. But I cannot connect very much to some sort of snapshots, as you just mentioned it. You know, that's a picture, yes, but maybe artistic, yes. But to me personally, it's not art when I cannot connect or feel it, you know.
Something that I'm very much thinking about lately, it's a conversation I had with the photographer yesterday, that I'm very much thinking about the idea between what makes a photograph a piece of art. Because I think photography is a bit of a weird, photography is weird because, you know, everyone has a very different opinion of photography now than they used to. And I think sometimes people can force artistic kind of filters / kind of artistic, you know, atmosphere onto images. And it's kind of like, you can make an image artistic without trying to be too artistic about it. Like people are trying, sometimes some people try too hard, I guess is probably what I'm trying to say. And they get to a point where it becomes a bit tiring, a bit boring, a bit repetitive. But anyway, let's cancel this. Let's talk about your work, because we haven't actually got onto that yet. And we've been here for like almost an hour, and I'm like, wait, we haven't actually spoken about your actual work yet. So let's go into that before I ramble on. I'll come back to that thought later, because it's actually part of the next section. So can you please describe your work for people if they have not seen it?
Yes, my work to people if they haven't seen it. How would I describe it? Gloomy, as you mentioned already, dark, emotional, uncomfortable, probably. To some, maybe monotone, since it's consists of the same color again and again, with just slight changes. And my work is aimed towards the awakening of decaying faces surrounding us. Let's just simply to embrace the darkness of our days. That's my work in a nutshell.
Oh, I like that. I like that a lot, actually. But also, so why is it about photography that allows you to do this? Like, why not like through, say, art or film or painting or sculpture?
Because I started with the thought of making film way too late, like way too late. When I started out, so many people they gave explanations about how they started with photography, but never paid much attention to videography. They just started 4 years later, 5 years later. They were, regretting it, bad shit. And I was like, yeah, I'm not interested in videography. Why should I, And now I'm at the same point as these people. I'm like, damn, I should have started way earlier with videography. Like, I should have started straight from the beginning, because there's so many things that you can adapt, from composition to color wheel to everything. But it's just the gear, You maybe have a camera that's able to make videos as well. You can combine it, but I just didn't do it, and I really regret it. I started way too late. I started a few months ago, because I actually figured out that my camera was able to pull off pretty solid video. And I was like, damn, and I even have the image stabilization, the in-body image stabilization. Like, okay, let's just try it. Let's just do it. And I started like way too late with this a few months ago. And so my photography is way more advanced than my videography, but I'm working on it as well. But as I figured out, videography for me personally, it takes way more time. It's way more time consuming than photography itself, with all the posts, editing and everything. It's just cutting music to it. It's a pain in the ass, especially when you have to get a grip on it. And other forms than that, I would really love to paint, mate. I would really love to paint, but I never found the time. And actually, I never found the time to do it. I'm that kind of guy. I'm that kind of guy who's awake at 3 a.m. and is watching a YouTube video about different brush effects and stuff like this on different acrylic colors on different papers. And I never even I didn't have a brush in my hands, But I'm just preparing in case, because it's really interesting to me to paint, but. And low key, I mean, this is really just, I'm already painting in Lightroom so much. I mean, if you see my workflow and I use brushes, dodge and burn, radial, linear filters. Like editing is really, sometimes I really feel like a painter in there. Don't get me wrong, but I'm like, shit, is this even editing anymore? You know, it's like, you connect the brush here, this brush there. I like to dodge and burn and to brush my pictures, you know, really to work out the details. And this is sometimes like utterly painting. It feels to me like that.
That's a really good consideration. I've kind of never really thought about it in terms of like the editing process is almost like a painter approaching a piece of art. That's actually it's just digital, so you don't really think of it in that same way. That's really, I've never thought about it like that. But I'm like, damn, that's good. I like that. That's really interesting.
Very a good input. Now I figured it out. Because this is why my edits, they take so long. You know, people just they see, okay, he made a carousel posts of 10 images. Nice, let's scroll it through. But each and every one of these images, I mean, it has at least 4 to 5 hours, and I'm not lying to you. You know, this is really
I'm aware.
Working time in there. You know, because I'm going to drop some editorial stuff in the near future where people are really want to make them see how this really looks. Yeah. You know, like how much I'm putting into it, because this is I experienced it with the presets now. I sold a few presets so far, and people were like, there was one guy and he was like, yes, but it doesn't look like yours. And I'm like,
oh, okay.
Dear. What are you going to tell that person? You know, he's probably a photography beginner as well. You know, he wanted to approach my look. I don't want to be a scumbag who's just, you know, who makes the impression I'm just here for your money. Give me your money and you can look like me. No. And I'm telling the people when I'm in the preset pack that I'm selling, you know, I put like a huge message in it and telling them, beware of, I shoot underexposed. This is not some kind of just apply, click, it's preset, ready to go. I tell them there are filters in there. You have to adjust them. If it doesn't look right, you have to just adjust the temperature slider. You know, I'm really giving directions step by step. And then they still come at me like, but it doesn't look like yours. And I'm like, yes, but I'm even putting, I put the core raw files where I developed these presets. I put them in the box and I'm telling them, download these pictures. Every picture has its own, you know, its name. The preset name is already the photo name, because my presets, you know, as an artistic fuck as I am, they also have their signature name and shit.
Yeah, of course,
so
yeah.
The photo has the same name. I'd be like, apply the preset to the picture, put it away. You can see, okay, what kind of conditions do I need to be shooting in? How do I have to expose correctly? What do I have to shoot? You know, I'm really explaining these things, and then they are just like, but it doesn't look like yours. What's your secret? And I'm like, maybe, just maybe, it's the 5 hours that I'm spending with dodge and burn and brushes. Just maybe.
I think that's the thing, though. Everybody wants like quite a quick fix, and because you have a very specific visual style, I think it's very easy for people to look at your work and be like, oh, that's easy, or oh, I can do that. Just give me a few filters and I can make it. And it's like, but you don't understand, like, it's been developed. It's been crafted over time. It's not a case of, oh, let's just slap a few filters on it and it's going to look great. It's like, you probably don't know what you're going to be doing with the next image and how you're going to tweak it, because you're always developing it. And it's just like, I don't get how people can think that, but why would somebody want to copy your work anyway and have your kind of visual style on their work anyway? Like, yes, it's good for learning. It's good for like understanding, you know, maybe people don't dodge and burn, or maybe they're not interested in color temperatures, or maybe they're interested in color theory. There are elements of it that's really helpful. But how helpful is it really if people are going to just recreate your visual style? Like, it's not conducive to the photography community. It's like you're literally just copying other people.
Yes. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I'm guilty of this myself. I mean, I downloaded presets from well-known artists as well, but not that I did not want to copy them. I had two intentions behind it. First of all, I wanted to support their work anyway because they're fucking nuts. You know, I support that. They didn't have any print, so I was like, I'm taking your presets. I'll support you in that way. But secondly, I just wanted to see their approach.
Yeah.
You know, what are they actually doing? And I'm not naming anyone here by name, but I was so disappointed. I purchased 4 presets from really great, really big photographers, you know, like really big names. And I was like, are you kidding me? Really? This is your preset? And I don't know how familiar you are with editing itself and how much passionate you are about it.
Yes. Yeah.
But when I have Lightroom, okay, you have the curve, you know, the tone curve.
Yeah.
And I go there personally, and I see the black, blue, green channel in the tone curve, and the shit, it was not even touched once. I'm just like, what are you doing then? Like, how is that possible? Oh, okay, I see it. You just pulled the blue slider to the very left.
Oh, no.
That's how you know. And this is something like, I was so disappointed. I get it from my personal point of view right now, that they didn't want to reveal their secret and stuff. Yeah. I totally get it. Because I will not reveal my secret either way when it comes down to my hue, okay? To the hue in my highlights and the hue in my blues, in my shadows, excuse me. But to be like, hey, there you can. They didn't even touch the color grading as well. Back then it was split toning. Forgive me, you know. And I was just split toning was touched, but only in the highlights, for example. And I was like, how really? Am I doing something wrong here? Like, your pictures, they look nuts. They look insane, you know? But am I too complicated? Do I think too complicated, maybe? Is there something that's wrong with me, you know? Do I put too much effort in it to make it look all the same somehow, where someone is just seemingly like putting 5 minutes of work into it and be like, so, okay, that's my look. You can buy it for 20 euros. There you go. You can look like me. And I'm on the other side like, fuck, man, touch the slider at least a bit, you know, just do it for me at least. Just touch the fucking tone curve. Like,
I think it's because, as you said, a lot of photographers, or just artists, but a lot of photographers don't want to reveal their secrets, because then, you know, it's kind of like, and it's kind of a good point in a way. It's like, how do you show your process without literally giving everything away? It's kind of a good point, but I can understand that in a way, but another way, not really. Surely you'd create something that is not going to be exactly what you're going to do, but it's going to be the quality of what you'll do.
It's the same for me. For example, for the presets that I developed, I'm always stressing out with the people in my stories and everything. I'm always stressing out the 3 main factors when it comes to editing in color for me are camera calibration, split toning, aka color grading, and the tone curves all the time. Red, blue, channel, everything. And the only thing that in my presets, for example, I did not touch the color grading, highlights, and the hue in the shadows slightly, but I made it everything, you know, like comparable via toning and everything. But I kept my secret and still make it look like, you know, like still get those blues out in a different kind of way so that someone can achieve it. And this is why I'm telling people all the time: if you do not achieve that look, if you do not have these green bluish tones, just adjust the temperature slider, because I developed it that way that it works for you. You know, I really put work into it, and then I see something like this, and I'm like, oh God, really, fuck it. And, you know, and I put radial filters and everything in there, and I wrote like, you really have to consider to adjust it, to move it, at least to make it brighter, darker, to remove it, whatever you like. And then you see a picture posted where there's the radial filter obviously in there, not even touched. And I'm like, I just explained it to you. Like, how can I help you even more to understand it? Because at first instance, I'm looking I'm looking at myself and be like, shit, did you say anything not very understandably to him? I mean, you are responsible therefore, I feel like it's my responsibility.
I guess in a way it kind of is, in the sense of that you're going to end up getting tagged in these posts, and or you're going to end up having your name and your brand associated with it. So it is your responsibility because it's your product you're selling.
Exactly. And this is something that I really want to, because as you pointed it out very well, my name is out there, Oh, I created it with the presets from Cursed by Morrow, for example, and it doesn't even.
I can only imagine that would be heartbreaking.
That's a direct hit, my friend. That's a direct hit when you really.
So actually, this is quite nicely onto the next question, which is about the idea of originality and style. So like, how important is it for you, for your work to have its own style and be original?
It is very, very, very important to have your own style and be original. Wait, I have to. Sorry.
Okay.
Because it took me a while to figure out where to go with my style, what to do with my style, as we were talking before, who am I aiming for? What am I aiming for? And it took me, I mean, if you talk to the followers that I have from the time back then, these kind of followers, the true ones, let's call them like this, they saw the development, for example, in colors and in composition. So they really know dude is coming his way, and therefore it took me so long to figure out to give a visual to the stories that I was more or less was processing with it. So it took me a while. For me, therefore, it's so damn important to have this look, this style. As I told you before, as I was just bypassing it real quick, if you cannot connect to my work now, there will be days where you maybe think back of it, or wait, there will be days where you can look back at it, where you can connect with it. And if you have to face these days, I'm here, like I can provide maybe something that helps you go over this phase or go over it. So therefore, it's only achievable with a certain look, if you ask me personally, to be remembered by. But if you just look again back at it from 2018, for example, was my street photography year, and I switched to fine art at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. My look, I figured out my color, my hue. I had these things on point, but I desaturated my pictures to death. Like seriously, I drained all the color out of them because I like them that way, and I like the fade in them, and to crush the blacks and everything. So completely decontrasted. And back then it worked perfectly fine for me. But when someone asked me like, why your pictures are so desaturated, what's going on? I'm like, yeah, I don't like contrast. And look at me now. It's 2022, and my pictures are contrasty as shit compared to where I actually started from, So I have that kind of development. Right now, lately, let's call it like this, I'm working with a contrary component like red in my pictures. I had it sometimes ages ago. I just put a little spot in there, dot in there, but it gets stronger and stronger these days. So I really have a contrary color in there to balance certain scenes out, especially in night photography, for example, but also in daytime photography, in my portraiture work, and so I'm putting these colors now together, something that I wouldn't be aware, I don't know, 2 years ago. I mean, I guess I doubt that you saw the work from there. I can
No, I
just
didn't.
show you a screenshot of it, for example,
Yeah.
but you will see it's so desaturated and not comparable with my work today. But I will send you a screenshot
Yeah,
later on.
definitely.
You will see yourself so that you can picture it yourself. So therefore, my work developed. It developed in a direction. First, it was desaturated. Now it's saturation. Next step is putting more contrary color into it, like red. So it's developing, but the only thing that really remains, that remained since day one, is the hue in the highlights and in the shadows. And the dodge burning and everything. And I also think something very important in my case, I think if you changed your style, not only constantly, but from time to time, if you change your style, you somehow lose the connection to your audience. This is what I think as well. Because as I told, I have my audience, I have my ideal viewer, and if I change that constantly, I will just disconnect with them. I saw it, I experienced it firsthand when I switched from street to fine art, I was so disconnected to my audience, like just a few stayed. Totally understandable. I mean, progress is undeniable. It's undeniable. You have to do it, at some point. But back then it was a drastic change, and people were like, oh, fuck, I'm not playing along that. I didn't sign up for that, I'm not here. Yeah, and you have to be aware that people come to you, visit your page, for example, or admire your art because out of certain reasons. And I think I just showcased mine well enough, so I know what kind of people are searching up for my work or coming up to me or wanting to chat with me, or these kind of people. But if I would change it constantly, yes, my spectrum would be wider. I would have different kind of people from different kind of niches probably. But then again, it's quantity over quality somehow. And yes, I'm developing, as I told you before, I'm doing different kind of things, and I'm just putting out what's efficient for the label itself. Everything else is just, that's not Cursed by Morrow. That's just a pretty flower, whatever, like delightful colors.
So what made you switch from street photography to fine art photography?
The stories. When I did street photography, I very soon came to a point, thanks to Fujifilm. I mean, my development was also, I had my plateaus and stages. I did black and white. Then I got the Fujifilm. I fell in love with the Fuji colors. I love to shoot with Fuji, and I was doing color all of a sudden. And then I started a project that changed everything. And that project, it was called Project 6 back then, and it was a project where I sat together with a few people, and they told me their stories, because I called out, I was just like, I would like to be interested in a project, work with you, give me your stories, and I will transfer them into art or into pictures. And they did so. And to me, it was like I heard some really amazing, strange stories. And I had that in mind, and I was aiming towards it. I was like, okay, I have this now in the back of my head. I need to go out there and find something that showcases the situation, the feeling of the situation, the person behind the story very well. And I was able to do it until a certain point where I hit a plateau, where the stories, because this little project, it grew bigger and bigger. And more people wanted to participate in it, but I wasn't aware to pull this off in the street anymore. I wasn't aware to pull it off in the moment, because, again, as street photography as well, I was never that kind of face in your camera kind of guy, because I respect personal space way too much for that. So I was more or less, I was looking for locations, where the light hit perfectly. And I was just, waiting for people to pass by or do something like this, or at least to ask them if it's okay to take a picture and things like this. And I just figured out, you cannot, I really loved that. I loved that concept. I loved that project, but I was aware that I cannot pull it off in street photography anymore, and I have to stage it, to really, to build a story behind the picture. I just had to pull the picture off first. I wasn't. It was not looking for the picture anymore. It really was to build a picture around it, and therefore I switched to fine art photography, or really tried to build my own stages up, And there was, excuse me, please.
No, I was going to say that. So why do you think that like telling a story or narrative is so important in photography?
Because you have a voice. You have a voice as an artist. You have a voice as a photographer. You have a voice as someone who's influential. And if you just compare it, this is something that really pisses me off about the famous people, for example, or people that really great musicians. Like, you have so many followers. You have so many people that are admiring you. You have the power to tell something, and all you do is unimportant shit, like try to change something. I think as an artist, or as someone who's really able to move something, you should use that voice wisely, and you should really use it in order to transfer something. And in my case, this is how I was canalizing the voices of the people who told me their story through my camera. So they were not able to tell these stories out of their own reasons.
Yeah.
And so I took it into my hands, or they trusted me enough to give that into my hands and to convert it into a picture. Because they knew my approach about photography, about street photography back then as well. They knew what I was looking for, But some of these stories, they were just so overwhelming. Like, I was desperately looking for that shot. I was desperately looking for that scenario. For example, how my pictures actually, I just like to build pictures around stories. This is actually what I'm doing. This is the concept of my art, stories that people may not be able to tell. And this is how this project back then it changed everything, because it gave me the kick into the direction. It gave me the kick into what I'm doing today, and it just gave me the courage to face my own stories as well, because I was talking to these people just as some sort of, as I told you, just to canalize their voice, just to make them be heard. And then I was like, shit, these people, their courage, it's amazing. Maybe I should just start with the same shit, and just put my stories into pictures. And this is how I actually switched into fine art. Yeah, this is where I really was very limited with what the street gave me, and I was also bored by it, to be honest, at some certain point, because I was more interested in the stories.
There's kind of an interesting consideration, the idea of like immortalizing yourself and your life through photography.
Yes.
Because it's kind of like, when you're no longer here, the images will be. May not necessarily in the form you want them to be, but it's still a documentation of your life. And it's also a documentation of the time you're taking currently now to actually create them. That's a really interesting consideration. Which is why I love talking to so many people, because I get very different things out of every single conversation. And I say this in every single conversation. And it's really interesting because people say stuff and I'm like, I've never considered that. So it's perfect. That's one of those moments where I'm just like, wait, that's maybe the whole point where we're taking images is the whole idea of just to immortalize our lives. I remind people we exist, that's probably it. So do you think that the whole kind of cinematic, moody images are overdone? And do you think that, are there any kind of like photography cliches you don't like?
Allow me to answer this question with a counter question. What is cinematic in your opinion?
So to me, cinematic imagery is an image that it doesn't tell a story, but it suggests a story. But that's edited like in a certain way that makes it seem almost not like a photograph, I guess.
Why I'm asking you this question is because I got a lot of... I don't see myself or my work as cinematic at all, but people tend to use that term on work. This is why this is why I was asking you, because to me it's confusing. Maybe I just have a different a different look on what's cinematic and what's not cinematic. But then when you read comments and get messages like, the cinematic is on point, and I'm like, that's not cinematic. Like, how can it be cinematic? This is why I'm asking you, because when you mention cinematic, the first thing I have in mind is light sources, different artificial light sources, different colors. That's cinema. That's boom in your face. May it be moody, may it be happy, it doesn't matter. But this is, lightning, perfect lightning, lightning on the face, background lightning, that kind of lighting. Like really lighting a scene out. That's cinematic for me personally. And when I take a look at my pictures, the last picture I posted, for example, from the silhouette in the between of the woods, that's not cinematic. That's just background light. How can it be cinematic? You know what I mean?
I do know what I mean.
Like the.
But I think so. I think two things. I think one, I think the term cinematic is overused anyway. I think we call anything cinematic, really. And secondly, I also think it kind of depends on what film you're referring to, because it's like when I think of somebody like Tarkovsky, that's a director. I don't know if you know his work, but he's a director whose work I would be like, oh, well, that looks like it could be an influence, or your work reminds me of his films because of the softness and the gloominess and the visual cues. I think it's more about like kind of the visual aesthetic of your work as opposed to necessarily the actual story itself. I don't know. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say your work is cinematic. I would say it's moody and it's considered. But then again, it would be cinematic, I guess, because it tells a story or it suggests a story. I don't know. It's a loose term.
I read that question. I was like, okay, what should I say? What is cinematic to him? Like, what is cinematic to people after all? Because maybe I just have the wrong impression. No. Let me rephrase that. I don't have the wrong impression, but I think that people have different kind of approaches and impressions when it comes to that word. And as you stated very well, it's an overused term. Like, everything is cinematic these days. What is cinematic? No, it's not. And for me personally, when I think of cinematic, I see a picture, in front of my eyes. And don't get me wrong, but my work, if it's not a night photography shot, it's by no means, to me personally, cinematic. And this is how I approach it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I actually think nowadays, with the imagery I'm looking at, I think images that are shot in the daytime can be more cinematic than things shot at night. So I think there's definitely a trope that, if it's something shot at night, it's automatically like a cinematic image. And there's a whole trope of like, I love night photography. A lot of people who are probably going to listen to this do like photography. So I don't want to be like disrespectful, because it's something that I really enjoy. But there's a level at which you kind of get a bit bored of it and you want something else. You kind of want like, oh, how can people redefine the night, not just with, a certain kind of through a cinematic lens? Like, there has to be other ways to take a picture of the night.
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
But then again, what's a cinematic lens?
Yeah, I think it comes down to the elements: color, composition, framing. Like, for instance, all my images at the minute that I'm shooting are cropped to 16:9, because that's the cinematic aspect ratio. And then at the minute, all the work I'm creating now, I'm putting subtitles on because that's cinematic. So I'm very aware that me talking about cinematic, I'm also doing the same thing. My work is not excluded from that. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's almost like we're trying to make photographs not be photographs as much as we can. But then again, is that a bad thing? I don't think that's actually a bad thing, though, to be fair.
No, I don't think so. But when you mentioned the ratio now as well, I completely agree. When I hear cinematic as well, I have the 16:9 ratio. I have the. So yeah, it really comes down to personal preferences. But to come back to your question, cinematically overused pictures, from what I consider to be cinematic, no. There are artists out there, big numbers in the game, who are just overdoing shit again and again, which is boring sometimes because it's nothing new. But then again, I don't look these big numbers up, to be honest. I like to like focus on smaller creators, really on these people who deserve to be who deserve to get some spotlight. And this is why my following or people that I'm following, they're not particularly big, but not because I just I'm more in that kind of support a small creator in order because they deserve it sometimes even more. And for what I'm seeing from my feed or from the people that I'm connecting with, I'm definitely not. No, I cannot get enough of it, because it's that kind of work that I'm seeing and I'm like, shit, how is he doing that? The light is like this. Maybe I could use it for myself. Maybe I could, I'm learning these kind of things because it may sound extremely stupid to you now, but I do not look at work from people who are having a silhouette standing in front of a beautiful landscape because, dude, I can pull that shit off myself, I don't need something like but I don't need these kind of people in my inspiration feed. I want to see work of people that are, first of all, way too underrated, and secondly, where I really can learn something from. And currently, or at the moment, where I'm really doing a lot with, where I'm trying to wrap my head around videography and stuff like this, of course, cinematic for me. Therefore, I have more of nighttime artists and visuals on my inspiration list, than let's go out in the morning and shoot some fog people, because I'm that kind of guy. So no.
Definitely send me some suggestions, because I've got quite a lot of cool people I can send your way. Like for sure. I'll send you some people. I love sending. What I love doing with the Flying Free Bowl, just me personally, I love connecting with people.
I just wanted to say, you are the connector here, like for real. You're really like putting them all together in one place and putting it together. That's amazing.
I love it. I honestly do. I think it's the best thing ever, because you never know who's going to see a piece of work from you that's going to inspire that, or maybe a piece of your work is going to inspire somebody. It's just like, it's so cool. Like, it's cool. And I get to talk to everybody, which is even better. Because there is an artist that I'm going to send to you later on today, and I've actually already sent your work to her, because we're talking about cinematic imagery and we're talking about the idea of atmosphere. Actually, no, I commented on one of your posts saying, check out this guy for atmospheric if you want to know about atmospherics. I don't know if you saw her or not, but I'll send her your work later, and I'll send her work to you later.
What's her name?
Her name is Riona Bethello.
Wait, is it? That's the name. That's the name. She's the painter,
yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I looked. I didn't see the comment. Okay, I did not see the comment. I have to agree. I have to be completely honest with you. But just before we started this interview, I was going through all these questions, and I was looking. And this is why I asked you for the name, because there was her name. There was an artist, and I looked it up, and I've never heard of her. Okay. And you were like, because this question was low-key uncomfortable for me, like,
oh, yeah.
my art was I never met someone. I mean, I never met someone who was like, hey, this looks like a piece of blah, 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 blah. So never someone compared my work to anyone else's work. And then you came along with that name, and I was like, what? Who's that? And I looked her up, and I'm amazed. Like, seriously, I love her paintings, and I felt like, shit, I need to do something with her. Like, we need to collaborate or something, because her paintings, the wind, the glass and everything, it's like, this is basically what I'm doing when I'm on my way to some certain destination and it's raining. I'm taking pictures of that, and she's painting it so well and so admirably, and I'm in total awe of her work. Like, seriously. It was now 10 minutes before 2:00 here, so I did not have the time, but I was like, shit, I took a screenshot of her page, just so that I can remember, because I wanted to reach out to her anyway, but I wasn't aware that something like this even existed, man. I was not aware. And this is what I mean. This is you. This is great what you're doing, You bring this to her. You have so much knowledge in that field. You have such an audience that you can be like, okay, it fits together. The puzzle fits. And then I'm here like, and I'm seeing this picture, I'm seeing her paintings, and I'm like, shit, this could be one of mine, or mine could be one of hers, vice versa, the same way, which is just, it's mine.
Actually, I bet she probably would. If you gave her some of your images, she'd probably paint them, actually.
That's something I would really look forward to, like, seriously.
Well,
we're gonna make that.
So one thing I do in my stories, I keep saying I'm going to do it, I will do it at some point, is I'm going to do actually kind of like, without trying to force people to connect, but I'm going to put two people together and be like, oh, these people need to collaborate, and have like, probably, because there's like quite a few pairings in my mind that I'm like, these two artists need to talk to each other. And I'm going to do that at some point in my stories. So I will put you with her just so that everyone can publicly see that you two need to talk to each other.
Definitely. Definitely you need to.
I want to do it, but I also don't want to be like forcing people to talk to each other. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But then again,
no, but it really comes down to the reaction of the individual, because again, I just saw her work real quick. Of course, someone maybe can see it as some sort of pressure, like, oh my gosh, Aaron thinks we have to talk, so let's just be gentle and nice and do it, But it's like, I cannot even describe it. I mean, my English is not the best after all, but I cannot describe when I saw that picture, the hue, the color, the rainy windshield. It was just like, looking into something I'm so fucking familiar with. And I was just like, what the fuck did he just do? How did he do that? like, what's that? It's amazing. It's like a mirror to the soul, like, fuck, there's something. So I really appreciate it.
No, it's fine. I'm really glad that you like her work. Her work is incredible. I love her work. She's one of those people where, like, she's just so great. But actually, let's get on to her question. So her question was, wait, where did I put it here? There you go. So, do you like being compared to other artists?
No. After all the talk we just had, no. I do not like to be compared to other artists after all, because I'm not saying that my work is one of a kind. Okay, I'm not saying that after all, especially after the talk we just had. But I'm saying that these stories or the approach to it is one of a kind. And as I told you before, like, I'm trying to convert these stories into pictures, and these stories are one of a kind to me, at least. So this is a very personal thing. And when someone is telling me, like, hey, this picture looks like, or is it a picture from him? Do you use his look? Do you use his preset? Is it something? I'm like heart shattered, I'm like, fuck, really? Like, really? It may be the artistic ego or whatever it may be, but something is like, but then again, I have to be totally honest with you, and I have to give you that thirsty, like, seriously. I never got compared to someone else as well. So this is it's a new situation for me, and I'm loving it. So maybe I like to be compared to somewhere else. Like, I really cannot explain the question any further, because I never had that issue, to be honest.
I think if you haven't had that issue, that's a good sign. But I think also, it's kind of like, it can go both ways. I think it's good to have like a touchstone or a reference to like whose work is similar to yours. That's a good thing, because it means that you're doing something right, other people are doing something similar. It gives you kind of a sense of belonging. But then I think it depends on the context in which it's said. If someone literally just says, oh, you're copying X, or this reminds me of X, it's kind of a bit like, well, that's devaluing you and your work. So I think it always depends on the context. And I think, yeah, you just don't want to feel devalued, and you don't feel like you're spending your time doing something that people just don't appreciate, because at the end of the day, you're putting a lot of time and effort into what you're doing. So,
Yeah, I got it. So, yeah, let's see if I got compared to other artists in the future, and then I can come back to that question again. But from now on, I think that I don't like the thought of it, because I see my work as something very personal and intimate. Excuse me, it's intimate. So therefore, I think, when you display yourself, when you showcase yourself, and when you lay your heart out on the silver tablet for the whole world to see, it takes a lot away from you. And when someone comes at you and it's like, hey, this looks like X, again, it's like it's heart shattering somehow, because you think like, shit, like I put so much into it only for you to compare it to someone else. Oh. But again, I think it's my thought on it, and I think it's the artistic ego that speaks out of there, and maybe just the vulnerability. Excuse me, I have problems with that word.
Vulnerability.
That you just, yeah, exactly, exactly that one. That you just, that you don't want to. It's an uncomfortable situation that you maybe don't want to face, but maybe have to sooner or later. I don't know. I'm not at that stage yet. I really
So your work is the perfect example of being, visually consistent. But do you actually ever worry about like being predictable or like repeating images?
I'm aware that I am. I'm very well aware that I am predictable at some point when people, if I do not change small things, small adjustments, for example, like I told you before, the desaturation thing, the thing with the red, more incorporating night photography into it and stuff like that, I'll be predictable very soon. I'm very well aware of that. But then again, I'm also very well aware of the fact that my clientele, the people who are following me, they are not consistent, because the phase in their life is not consistent. I'm really just there for the majority of people. I just will be there for a fraction of time, like when they really can connect to it, or really look back at it and be able to connect to it and think back at certain kind of times. But I do think, yes, that I also became very predictable, I have to admit as well, before I reorganized my feed. I became very predictable for myself. So yes, I agree. I am, I could be, and I was as well, but I am also totally aware of it.
But I think that's actually quite interesting that you're not like afraid of that, or like that's not a problem for you.
No, I'm not afraid of it. As I told you, because I really see it like this. I may have that wicked approach to it, but these kind of pictures, these kind of stories, they are not permanent. They are just they came out of a low, for example. They are not your entire life, and therefore I may be not there. This is the approach that I'm having. It's really hard to put it to you into words, what's just going on in my mind when I'm hearing that kind of question. But I'm aware that my work may not be permanent for everyone. But just for me personally, you really have to excuse me, you really have to be a fan of it. And to me personally, when I did the prints, there was a room, my small room, my working room. I had 22 prints at the same time, in that room.
Yeah.
And I was just going through them, and I was just, they were all around. I plastered it up all around the room, just to see, just to have the impression for myself what it would be like, what it would feel like to enter a room, like, for example, when you have a gallery or something like this, when you step into there and you see these oppressive tones and these moody, gloomy art from everywhere, and I was just like, that's a theme. That's a theme to me. It's like, this is exactly what I wanted to achieve. This is exactly what I wanted to do, to have a theme to your work. There may be slight changes in there, but the overall picture, it's one topic. And in these 22, for example, now these pictures, in these 22 prints, there was literally my life in front of me, as plain as it may sound. And this is like, it's some sort of going back into time. And just, you just have to turn around and you connect this, you connect that. And no, I'm not afraid. I'm really not afraid of that, to be predictable, or to lose the hype, or whatever, as people may call it. Because as I told you in first place, I'm doing this for me. Everything else that I'm getting out of it, may it be something for, selling prints, selling presets, make money of it. It doesn't matter. This is just a benefit. This is just a plus to all of this. But personally, my art helped me overcome so many things and so many struggles in hindsight. Because if I knew that I could achieve this way earlier in the day, dude, I would have, a lot of things that I wouldn't have to go through. But now it's just like, you look at it and you're like, shit, this is your work.
That's so fascinating, because it's just like, I think we forget how important art is to create, not just a final image itself. It's not just about, oh, look at how cool this image looks. It's like the process of getting to the image, the process of, internalizing and externalizing your thoughts and emotions that went into creating that work, and the whole kind of pre-production and the whole thought process. I think we forget very easily that any piece of art is really just
very well said. Yeah, exactly. That's it. And that's the way art should be used for. And this is why I told you before, if I cannot feel a piece of art, work, painting, a riff, or whatever it may be, then it does not affect me. And not on a deeper level, let's call it like that. Like, it's not like I'm not saying, oh shit, you're a great guitarist, like, whew. But it's not like, I'm totally admired by your skill. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you think that, how am I gonna actually answer the question? That's it. So how important do you think it is for an artist to be personal online? Like, do you think showing yourself online is going to help your work or hinder your work?
Showing myself online in a sense of really being physically present.
Yes. So like, if somebody wants to know about you in your life as opposed to just about your work, like, is that going to be helpful to your work, or do you think that would hinder your work? Or I guess what a better way to ask it is, like, at what point are you comfortable to be known by people?
I would just personally, I would prefer that people know me. See, this is the kind of approach that I'm the kind of tactics that I'm approaching currently with my label here. The other day, let me tell you a quick story. The other day, a friend, we were sitting together, and a friend of mine showed a friend of his, a girl I haven't seen before. I never met her or something. He showed her one picture of mine, because he had a screensaver, wallpaper on his phone. She was like, "What's that? I know that. What's that? I know that picture." And it was a picture I haven't been posting online. Okay, so it was not on my feed. It never appeared. Oh. And she was like, "This is the dude from this dude from Instagram, right?" And she only recognized this picture by the colors, by the spectrum and by the composition. And I was sitting next there, and I felt so flattered by it, I'm not that kind of guy who was like,
"That's me,
my work, hello, that's me, Marcel, I did this." No, I was just sitting there, like, he looked at me, his eyes, they were like, should I tell her? And I was just like, fuck, this is such a huge compliment for myself. Like, people actually, this happened a few times, not the same situation, but also as well online, for example, where people just like, I know your work. I know that picture because of the colors, or I saw that picture. And this is so much flattering to me as an artist for my current approach, than to be like, hey, that's the face of the guy who makes gloomy pictures. So but I do think, on the other hand, I think it could be very beneficial, as we talked before, in a sense of feeling more connected to the artist, feeling more connected to the person themselves. Because when people actually see my face, they will be like, hey, although he got X followers, I can really reach out to him because I know, I have the impression or the feeling that I know him, and I know that he will answer because I have a face to him. And you know what's the worst thing about not putting your face out there? I swear to God, there's one huge downside to it, which I would have never thought that I have to face. And this is finding models.
Yeah.
You cannot find any model which you do not know personally, or I'm doing the network. Okay, I'm reaching out to people here in my area. I'm living in a very small, crowded place, so that kind of place where barely everyone knows everyone. So if you don't reach out to someone who at least knows that you're the face behind this label, these people, they will not answer you. They will not take you for full. And this is the biggest problem that I'm facing right now. It's the biggest problem that I was facing 6 months ago, because you have to see it like this. When I started this whole conceptual art thing, I had concepts all over my head. I still have concepts from 2018 that I wasn't able to pull off yet because I don't have the models to do so. This may sound very plain, but this is a huge problem for myself, for my work, and the biggest downside for my work. Because when you talk to people, they're like, yeah, okay, it's okay, but I mean, it's understandable. Because they may just be thinking like, okay, it's another creep with a camera.
Yeah,
like, who the fuck is this? Like, he could be a 50-year-old guy. He could be a 12-year-old girl. Nobody knows.
It's true.
And this is the problem. This is the biggest downside, because again, it's a small area, and you cannot reach out to strangers like this. I met strangers like literally someone I never met before, without her knowing who I was or what I was doing, once. And you know how much networking I've been doing over the past few months just to get my concepts through? No fucking chance. Because people are always hyped. And then, last call, like, oh, I really don't want to do it, or I don't have time, or whatever. And I understand it somehow. But then again, I mean, when you approach someone with intentions that aren't bad after all, you still have to face the consequences of staying anonymous, because you could be whoever in the world, like some sort of creep or whatever. No one knows.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a very, very good point, especially if you're shooting models and you're shooting people that you don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I need, for my last project, I had a concept in mind, again with the color scheme, popping red into there, and it had to be a blonde girl, because it would go along so well with the colors, with the background, with the red. So I had this in mind. It has to be a blonde girl in order to counter these colors. I have no idea how many messages I wrote to people, in my area. And I have no idea how often they thought of me of being a creep or whatsoever. But this is really, this is nerve-wracking, like, for real. I mean, I did it in the end. I was able to pull it off, but only by the help of a friend, who knows someone, blah, blah, blah. But
I think also with that, in my experience, because one thing I used to do back in the day is shoot for modeling agencies. It depends on the approach, because if you're sliding into people's DMs, that looks very creepy, but if you're going through, I mean, do you have modeling agencies that are like kind of consistent over there? No, that's it. That's your problem then, because had you had like modeling agencies you can contact, then you could do like, work for people's books, and then you can, you have like kind of better access. But there has to be some kind of network where you can approach people, not that you're not approaching them professionally, but in a more kind of professional platform. Because I think like DMing people on Instagram to do images just screams creep.
Exactly, that's the point. A creep with a camera, great. Yeah. As if I wouldn't have 40 of them in my inbox already. And
I mean, then again, though, if you show them your work and you send them, I mean, this way where you need a website. So you seem like you're established. A website that has a biography that pretty much has your face on it, because you'll need your face there somewhere just so people know you're not like a robot. I mean, how else are they going to know?
Do you have any idea of how much of a plateau or how much of how hard this is to me personally? I designed the website in my head, okay? The only ingredient that's missing, it's the picture of myself, this year, to showcase, hey, I'm a human being, I'm not a robot. I swear to God, I took pictures. I cannot tell you how many pictures I took, okay? I really don't have the numbers. It was uncomfortable as shit. Editing these pictures was uncomfortable as hell, and I was just sitting there like, and you know what's the best part about it? Every goddamn picture turned out to be creepy. There wasn't some sort of picture and I was like, you could look.
So what you need to do then, get some nasty picture of you. There you go, perfect, all done.
I already asked you. Yeah, I already asked.
That concludes the first part of my conversation with Cursed by Morrow. Thank you very much for listening. If you have any questions or comments about it, please send me an email at theflyingfruitbowl@gmail.com or by social media sites such as Instagram and Twitter. The Flying Fruit Bowl podcast is now available on several platforms such as Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Music. If you like the show, please consider rating, reviewing, sharing, or subscribing on any of those platforms to help spread the word. Also, please check out theflyingfruitbowl.co.uk for daily art inspiration and written interviews. And if you're a creative, please get in touch for a chance to be featured or interviewed. We now also have a Patreon page if you're interested in supporting the platform further. Tiers start from £1, and more information can be found over at patreon.com/theflyingfruitbowl. As well as Patreon, we also have a PayPal for one-time donations, the link to which can be found in the show notes. Once again, thank you very much for listening to this episode today, and until next time folks, please stay safe.